Alright, well, this is the third tier list I basically plan to do right now. I'll probably do more in the future, but for now, this will be it. And this time we're going to go after the Roman buildings that you can basically build. Now, much like the other two, tier lists I basically did, this is based off of one made by, Quality Old Games, and he, of course, also has his own video basically on it. And he also has his own tier list as well, but I have one minor grievance basically with, his tier list. And you can't really tell basically at a glance here, but I'll note that basically the difference between his and mine, if you basically look at it, comes down to the last two buildings here, which unfortunately the mines +1 and the regular mines are not on here. So yeah, basically the entire reason I basically made my tier list this time is because no mines. So yeah, oh well. I'm gonna leave this basically on here by the way because he of course basically has this stuff here, and if I go to his community ranking, you'll see that basically there's nothing in here right now. So yeah. Okay, so presentation mode. Much like before, by the way, there's also a Google Sheet I'm just using here, and something else to keep in mind, by the way, in comparison to the other Google Sheets I'm using here. Note that there's basically a lot more things I'm basically measuring these basically by these buildings, and part of the reason basically for this is because buildings have a lot of functions basically in this game, ranging from generating wealth, giving you access to troops or units and stuff like that. I should probably just call this recruitment actually, so let's just change that right now. Upgrading your troops or generals, stuff like that. Happiness. It might give you defensive properties for your settlement. Procurement, so basically when you can basically get access to it. How much I basically use it. Sometimes it'll provide you growth to your settlements to increase their population. Traits and retinue. Some of these have a positive effect on your traits for your generals and retinues. Some have negatives. And you basically want to take this all into consideration, all these factors basically for building. So quite a bit here. Now, note by the way, in terms of this last one, traits from retinue, I have everything basically set to be a free, basically by default. So the reason for having this basically set to be free by default is because some buildings in this game actually have negative retinues and traits they can basically give your generals. A good example would be the Hippodrome and the Circus Maximus. If you don't build if you don't build the Circus Maximus or Hippodrome, you're not going to be able to have the races. But the races in and of themselves can actually be adjustment to your generals as well. So, they're a little bit lower as all that. It'll become particularly more noticeable when you get down to the Temple of Bacchus down here because I have these set it to 1 for obvious reasons, and we'll go through it when we get to it. Some artists basically have positive though, series basically have 4 because they basically are your general space more fertile. Same the arena, amphitheater, coliseum. Loving the games is good for your population, order and stuff like that. And down here I also have the Star of Saturn that basically gives full buffs. But we'll get to that when we get down there. So let's just start out the governor's house up here. All right, so basically these are the palaces basically in this game. They start off with the governor's house at the lowest settlement, and up to Imperial Palace basically is the highest one. And all of these basically are in a mediocre, laudable sort of range. So mediocre, mediocre, laudable, laudable, laudable. So let's go like this. We'll go like this. And we'll go, let's see here. Let's go like that, and that, and that. Alright, so why are these basically all ranked right here? Well, these are basically important structures because you need these basically to upgrade your settlement in order to basically get access to their structures, and they also basically let you essentially combat squalor and stuff like that. So they're pretty important for that purpose. Outside of that purpose though, you're basically gonna use them for recruiting peasants and diplomats and stuff like that at at the second and third level right here. And at the stage of the Imperial Palace down here, you're gonna be using these to basically recruit Praetorian cohorts, and like for upgrade wise to be able to basically get like your post Marion generals and stuff like that basically upgraded. So they have some purposes basically. Um, Now, a note by the way, in terms of helping you with combat scholar, doesn't really become much an issue I find until you get to the governor's palace, and then later on basically get to proconsul's palace, imperial palace. Very important basically have giant cities sort of manage. Um, I'll note as well by the way though that for procurement wise, of course because these require population to sort of build, they take a while to basically get to, so you need to have well, you basically build the governor's house wherever you want to. And the governor's village basically requires 2,000 population to build, so that's nothing. Governor's palace requires at least 6,000 population, which is nothing to scoff at. I believe it's 12,000 for the proconsul's palace, and then 24 or 25,000 to build imperial palace. So it takes a while to get these later ones. I generally try to keep my city space around either a governor's palace level, 6,000 or above, or proconsul's palace. Getting to imperial palace at that point, yes, you can basically build cities to be this build, but at that point, you don't really need to I don't really try to get my cities to be this big, so I get 1 or 2 to basically get the Marian reforms, maybe have a couple summons to build really powerful units, but it's nothing really really care about at that point, so that's just basically them. Alright, defensive fortifications: palisade, wooden walls, stone walls, large stone walls, and epic stone walls, all built by the Romans. The purpose for these is pretty evident because they all provide defense. In varying amounts, by the way, I'll throw out as well. Now, I'll note basically in terms of walls, by the way, something I actually recently learned is they actually provide a happiness boost to you. They actually give a small public orb basically boost to them as well in the remastered version. So they're basically useful for that purpose. And well, what can I basically say about them? In fact, I'm basically gonna quickly just throw them in my list here. So palisades and wooden walls. I have these basically the B tier. This should actually be yellow, so let's just quickly put that in the yellow right there. Whoops, undo that. Alright, so I basically have the palisade as being a B tier thing here, so let's just go, let's see here. These are probably one of the more important things for these builds, so let's just put that right there in laudable. The wooden walls, they are mediocre to say the least, so let's just throw them right there, I guess, right behind the governor's house. Stone walls, one of the best unit buildings in the game, so fantastic. Large stone walls, they're decent enough, so going excellent. And then epic stone walls. They're probably better than these things, but it takes so long to procure, so I'm just gonna throw them right there. Alright, so the thing about walls, by the way, is that they all provide different advantages basically to being built. When you're basically building the palisade, for example, it's mainly gold basically being built, so this is sort of provide you with an extra turn for sieges. Unless the opposing army brings say a ballista or a onager, they can't actually bust through your walls. And basically that's the purpose of the palisade, sort of to keep enemy armies from just marching into your city, basically taking it. Wooden walls don't really provide a whole lot of extra defense. They have reinforced gates, but they're probably not providing a big big buff basically to your walls that the palisade doesn't provide already. So I basically only see these basically available for the happiness basically boost they basically give you. And I'm not actually sure they basically give you any happiness boost that much in comparison to the palisade. So not really that great basically in that sort of regard either. Stone walls. Now I rate the stone walls as being the preferred defensive fortification the build this game. And the reason I basically like to build them is because they basically give you large stone walls, which basically require you to actually have the siege ladders or siege towers in order to climb over for the enemy forces. And because you have to basically build those, you basically have a chance basically to sort of basically kill enemies basically on walls when they basically pop in. The other advantage is that you can also set siege equipment basically aflame with your towers, and your towers are basically a lot more beneficial to you in the stone walls when you basically are built as opposed to the regular palisade or wooden walls. Now, they are a little bit hard to sort of like, procure because like you have to basically get up to like, 6,000 population before you can start building them. But I basically build these in all my suns that I basically can because like, they provide you like such a nice defensive boost. And they also give you like, an increase in happiness over like, the palisade and like, I believe by like 5% for like, people like your people happy. So overall, these are just an awesome like, thing to sort of like build. So yeah, I rate them as like, one of the best like, things in the game and I, sort of stand by it. Alright, the barracks. We have the regular barracks, military barracks, legion barracks, and army barracks, and urban barracks. Now, these like, are all like, varying like, their use because like, different tiers of like, units basically pop out of them. You'll basically get access to like, the town walks basically from the regular barracks, Hastati from like, the militia barracks as well as the auxiliary unit in the like, post-Marian. You'll get basically from Legion Barracks the like early like legionary cohort or the Principes. The armored barracks provides you with like Triarii or like the regular legionary like cohorts. And the urban barracks are basically only built in like the late game provides you with like the urban cohort, which is it'd be great if it was actually a little more available, but it's not basically available until then. So yeah. Now, I'm not basically like, in terms of like, these barracks, the best one I consider is probably Legion Barracks because obviously it gives you access to like, the Principes and like, the early legionary cohort. And, for most part, I use them quite a bit. And, I really don't think the army barracks should be that low, so I'm just gonna quickly change something. So let's just change this up to be a 4. I use these like quite a bit to sort of like get access to like, the legionaries because those are like the preferred like, um, units. So let's just basically boost those up a little bit right there. All right, where was I? So barracks basically have down here in the D tier. So let's just throw them basically down here in efficient. Militia barracks and like the army barracks basically have them in like orange. So let's see here. No, I want to basically throw this basically over here, I think, because I like Hastati quite a bit. So let's throw it right there. Legion barracks basically up there in excellence. So just go up there with like the stone walls. Actually, just throw them ahead of like the stone walls because I like them a little bit better than them. Um, let's see here. Army barracks and urban barracks. So you go down here, and then the army barracks. Where to throw it? I'm gonna say basically ahead of like the palisade because I actually do like like basically building these a lot like in the late game. So I'll throw them basically right there. All right, so what I basically rate these basically like as they basically are. Obviously, they're basically your production structures, and like these are like your bread and butter ones for like the Romans by the way as well. So I use these like structures quite a bit in order to like win the game overall. Compared to like the other like structures I can basically build, and I also basically like the troops that basically come out of them. Like you get like crap out of the barracks, but you get a style of like militia barracks or not. Okay, is that right? Militia barracks basically use Hastati. Yeah, because Hastati, Principe, Triarii. So yeah, but although that barracks base is crap, but militia barracks basically get access to a side, which is basically just awesome. Legion barracks basically gives you access to like Principes and of course early legionary cohorts, and yeah, I have to love like basically or like legionary cohorts basically to sort of like pull you through the game. So all in all, basically very important like structure basically for like win the game with. So they're important. Um, then we get down to like the stables. Now, I have mixed opinions basically on the stables, by the way, because I like basically having access to like say the legionary cohorts, but like you basically not legionary cohorts, but legionary cavalry basically get from the hippodrome. But like I don't like the fact that basically the traits basically get them are kind of negative for them. Um, I do like the fact that basically you get access to like say like the war dogs, like the equites, and like you also get like access to like cavalry auxilia and stuff like that. But they aren't really like the best units basically in the game. But they're still like important structures basically to sort of like have around, I guess. So let's just see here. Cavalry, Elite Cavalry, Hippodrome, and Circus Maximus. I'm going to say the Circus Maximus, I probably like it better than the Urban, so we'll throw that basically over here. And then the other ones, Stables and Cavalry. So I'm just gonna throw this basically up here then right now. Do I want to move the stables basically up a little bit as a thing, right? I think I was gonna keep them basically below these walls, but well, do I really care about epic stone walls that much? No, not really. So yeah, we'll move it right there, I think. So I'll not basically in terms of like, production structures, these basically have access to like, your cavalry units. But the thing about like, cavalry side, it's not really that beneficial to the Romans, so I don't really use these as like much as like say like the barracks basically in like my build queues. I still build these quite a bit by the way, because like, sometimes it's good to basically have like, one or two basically for like, if you want to basically have like, trace basically random races, then like, if you want to basically get it. You also basically want to try and avoid perhaps basically having like, border races like, negative traits be popping up as well. So, you know, they're basically cons basically to stables, so basically bonuses basically to them as well. And like overall, like, they're important to build, but not like the most important things. Alright, archery is basically gonna be next. We have like, practice range, archery range, catapult range, and siege engineer. And I was gonna throw this right off the bat. Boom. That's basically one of the worst structures in the game I think to sort of build, so I think I actually have it as the worst, perhaps. So yeah. So there's the the last building basically on the queue basically is a throw out there, but whatever. Practice range, catapult range, archery range. My headset went off there for a little bit, but whatever. I'm gonna say this is basically ahead of that barracks right there. And this is ahead of them both. But the archery range. I do like the archery range, by the way, in this game. It's important, like, building to sort of, like, make use of, so... where to throw it is a thing. I'm going to say it's probably behind, like, this barracks, so that's basically where we're going to throw it. So, basically, in terms of, like, what these basically provide you, by the way, I don't really use, like, the practice range, because it basically only gets you, like, Veltes, but when you basically get to, like, the archery range, that's basically when you get, like, regular archers and, like, archery auxilia, which are, like, of course, decent enough basically to sort of, like, make use of, so high recruitment there for obvious reasons, because, I like what basically comes out of it. The catapult range basically gives you access to, like, your archers and stuff like that, and those can be useful if you basically want to, like, knock down walls and stuff like that. They are a little bit hard to procure, and, like, I don't really use them that much, but I mean, I guess they're there if, like, you basically want to use them. And of course, siege engineer basically access to, like, heavy archers and, like, repeating ballistas and stuff like that. Probably get scorpions with catapult range, but whatever. Yeah, siege engineer basically I don't really care about the units. They're basically hard to build, like the structures. I don't use them at all. There's like the worst structure in the game for the most part. For me at least. Alright, so that's basically like, your production structures. That's basically like your defensive and like, governor houses basically, so to speak. Now we're going to enter some like trade structures basically down here. So we'll start off like, the blacksmith, the armorer, and the foundry. Now, I have to say basically, in terms of like, these structures here, I don't really use these basically a whole lot. I'll generally build like a couple of blacksmiths basically early on, but later on basically I'm like not really using these structures that much to be, sort of speak of. So, I'm probably like, underrating this a little bit perhaps. Actually, this would be like a free, but these structures basically here. The purpose of like, the blacksmith, the armory, and the foundry is basically upgrade your soldiers so they basically have like, better like, offense, better defense, stuff like that. But I think that's like, I find like it's probably as better as like, not really care about this stuff and just sort of like focus on like, building like, production units and like, just building units basically instead. So that's basically where my money basically generally goes instead of like upgrading them. Because tactics basically is what will basically win you in this game, not like, how your quality of troops, so to speak. I mean, quality of troops is important, but just having troops is basically more important than like, the quality of what they basically do, I guess, for most part in a lot of situations. procurement wise, basically the blacksmith you basically get right after like you basically upgrade to like the governor's house, so it's pretty like easy to basically get. Um, armor you need to like upgrade it again to like basically get access to like the next like phase of it. Now Foundry is basically a little bit different because this requires you basically have like an Imperial Palace basically in place, and I believe you need to actually have like some other stuff as well, but in order to like basically get it. Sometimes like these like building spots would actually have like prerequisites where you actually have to build like traders post or like a forum for example, and I think the Foundry might be one of these as well. Not entirely sure on that, but it's a thing to keep in mind. But anyhow, I don't really use these structures a whole lot because like I'm generally just trying to like build up my troops as opposed to like upgrade them so to speak. So I might be underrating them a little bit, but that's just basically how I basically see them. Let's see here. So I have the wooden walls basically at 18 right there. Just trying to decide where I want for the armory here. So the armory is basically going to go ahead of like the wooden walls. So let's throw it right there. The palisade I had at 20. Eh. And I'm going first right here because that's basically where it basically is. This is behind this barracks right there. Foundry. They're going to be like around the same as like the barracks I guess, but a little bit better. So let's just throw her right there. So that's basically where I like rank like the like upgrade structures. Like they're probably like more valuable than they really are. Basically my in like in the general game of things. But I don't use these that much in my playstyle. So there's like this down basically so to speak. All right, traders post, market, forum, great forum, and curia. So on none of these structures here, I make ample use of basic trade posts, basically not really for like the like economic like boons these basically give you, but basically for like their growth basically. So these are like our first like growth structures basically so to speak of, and basically the traders like post basically is like a small little increase to your population, and it also basically requires you like prerequisites for like stuff like aqueducts and stuff like that as well. So they're pretty important. They basically also like help during a little bit of wealth as well, but not as much as say like the ports or like the farms basically like that basically come after. And for most part, they're useful. Now, another basically there's like a couple things to keep in mind as well. A couple of these things I basically have like it should be up a little bit by the way to like be 17 I think. So let's just change that quickly. So great form will be a yellow. Now, basically going on with like these like structures here, you note that basically for recruitment, when you basically get to the market, you're basically able to build like your merchant like units as well as like your spies. And when you get to like the form, you get access to like assassins. And if you're playing with like merchants again, you're basically like getting like a second merchant for like a great form. So these basically all provide like some interesting like sort of like benefits basically to you that like sort of like flesh out their use. I'll note that they're fairly easy to procure, like these like initial ones. Later on, they get a little harder to basically build, and like as a result, based on abilities like great form or like curious as much basically as a result. But I really ample usually say like the train posts in the markets in this game because I really like to have like access to, of course, like the growth basically for like the initial like trader outposts. Also, getting access to like the merchants and like the spies is like important for like the market. The form's like okay because it gives you access to like the assassins, which are like they're there. I'm not really gonna complain about them, but um, if you use assassins and have like use assassins, they can be useful. So why not? All right, where to rank these guys? So the trader's post is probably like above these right here. Market, sorry Stonewalls, I like you, but you're not as good as the market. Forums and great forum. These guys are around the cavalry stables over here, so I'm gonna say you're ahead of this, but I'm gonna say that you're behind this. And then we're gonna have like the curia. So The Curia have it as like one of the worst structures based in the game, but they're definitely like one of the better ones to sort of like make use of. So let's just throw it right there. Now I should probably actually know something about the Curia, by the way. It actually gives you like a boost to your happiness when you build it, and that can be like very nice to sort of like keep like your like bigger cities basically afloat. But something about the Curia is that it's actually like one of these structures like the hardest basically to get in the game because I think it takes like 9,600 like denarii basically to sort of like build one of these like Curias, and basically like the only real benefit you're basically getting from the Curia is basically the happiness bonus at this point. Like you're not really like caring about your money that much from like the city that much, and like um, anything else basically provides. So Curias, they're basically like the like the economic form that like it's just like a little bit lacking for the most part. All right, port, shipwright, dockyard. There's only 3 like ports in this game, but they're all like important places to build. The dockyard is like commonly called to be like commonly called like the best thing in the game. So also just throw us right up in fantastic right there. Shipwright, that's better than like a trader's post in my opinion. And then dockyard. You're gonna go into right there. All right, so I ranked these basically pretty high in the game, and it's not because of the ships basically built, but rather the economic like portfolios basically get from them. When you basically build a port, that basically like increases like your trade with like neighboring settlements that are basically not connected by land. For island settlements that's basically important, but basically even for like mainland like settlements like Rome or like or something like that, you can get some like massive like economic like potential of like a port, especially if you trade like a very very valuable commodity. It can also be very important for like other purposes as well. If you're playing like say like the Carthaginians, if you have like a port in Carthage, you basically have like your grain basically come out of like Carthage basically going elsewhere. And you can basically get like a massive boost to like you're like develop as a result of that. Same like the Greeks, they have like Syracuse because like Syracuse basically is also like an awesome place to have like a port for like the like grain benefits basically as a result of that. Now, I'm not bothering in terms of like the ships basically get out of these. You basically get the brireme out of like the port, you get the trireme out of like the shipwright, you get like out of the dockyard basically like the green aquarium. They're fairly like significant for what they basically provide, and I can't really scoff at any of them for what they basically like offer you. For the most part, I mean, have used like all these like quite a bit. The dockyard I don't really build as much because like the economic prospects start to drop off by like the dockyard, but they're still there quite a bit, and they're also like a little bit difficult to basically build because you need to have like a bigger cell base to build them. But overall, all pretty like powerful like structures for like to basically offer you. So I think they basically all deserve to be like the upper tiers of like the list, shall we say, for the most part. All right, we're getting down to farms at this point. So land clearance, communal farming, crop rotation, irrigation, and latifundia. Now, I note that people really like complain about like farms because they basically increase like your population growth by a lot, and that can be very very detrimental to your like your settlements in like the long run. And for most part, I agree for most part, so I basically avoid building like some of like the later ones. But early on, you can basically get some like really good good growth in your settlements, which is basically important. So land clearance, communal farming, crop rotation, very important for the Romans because they actually can manage like the population order and like you get bigger cities and stuff like that. So let's see here. I think I'll say land clearance is probably ahead of like dockyard, so I'm just gonna throw right there. Communal farming, ahead of a hippodrome, but before like the Great Forum. Crop rotation. Crop rotation is where you start to have like a bit of a detrimental building at this point. So I'm gonna throw it there, but it's like starting to get like shall we say? And irrigation latifundia. I didn't have the circus maximum that high, so I guess we'll throw like these basically like here and like here. So the thing about farms, by the way, is that they basically provide population growth as well as like a little bit of like income basically from building them. But the population growth can be like both a detriment and like a blessing if you like you're not careful of it. Basically, the thing about like land clearance and communal farming is that like for Romans it was just awesome to basically build because you want big settlements like early on anyways. By the time basically building like crop rotation though, there's not as much benefit basically to like building like the crop rotation because you already basically have like a lot of other stuff basically start building your stones at that point. Basically building wise for the Romans, so it's starting to drop off a little bit. And then by the time we get like irrigation, Latifonia, the only reason I ever build like irrigation is basically sort of like stop with the like culture penalties from like initial like structure basically built it builds in slums already. And I never really built like the Latifonia, so it's just like down there, but whatever for the most part. By the way, both of these are basically hard to sort of like basically get access to because you have to build like fairly big stones basically to get them, but whatever. All right, so roads. Roads are pretty powerful, so where to basically throw them, I guess. I'm gonna throw roads basically ahead of you, but I'm gonna throw paved roads behind you. And highways. I like me some highways, by the way, so do I want right there or a little bit higher, perhaps? Higher than blacksmith. Higher than stables. Yeah, why not? Let's just go all the way. So higher than like everything else on the list. It's basically the top of the list. So another thing, the thing about roads, by the way, is that it's pretty obvious what they're basically built for. Basically, they speed up like your units basically like travel along them, which is very important for like getting like your units basically from like your core like your heartland states to like your hinterland states, so to speak. They're also useful for like trading purposes. Note that paved roads basically give access to like additional trade. And I probably should actually increase this a little bit, but let's throw it right here. And we're gonna move this way to right, behind you, I think. Now, the thing about roads basically is that like they're useful for like economic purposes once you get like to pave roads and highways, and basically like the thing about roads is that like primarily I use them for like moving my troops around. Paved roads and highways are useful for like the economic purposes, but I find I don't really get that much of a benefit basically from it for the most part. And I basically have like some usage basically for the economic purposes, but it's basically mainly I'm building roads for like this travel my like troops around. So I like roads basically they have like their purpose, but not really building for economics, just basically building for like moving my troops around for the most part. And like I like to move my troops around by like land as opposed to like by sea, for example. So there's that. Public baths, sewers, and all this other stuff down here. So I'll note basically sewers. I have this like my most like favorite building in the game, and it might sound a little bit odd basically having like sewers basically all the way at the top there, but the thing about sewers is that they basically provide you with like a small little like health bonus as well as like a public order bonus. So they basically help with your population growth and like your like public order. And because I barbarian factions can't build it and stuff like that, if you like build it in a summon and lose it, it's gonna provide like culture penalties to like your like conquering foes. So it's got some like interesting ideas basically to it as well. Primarily, the reason I basically build sewers basically for the happiness. They can be used for like growth, but that's like sort of like a secondary thing. I build them all my sons though, so that's basically the reason I basically have them so high. The dual build more in ports is the thing though. I'm gonna say I don't build them that much though, so we're just gonna drop that down a little bit. Just like I say, like the ports are a little bit better because ports really should be at the top of the list, so let's just do that. Public baths, aqueduct, and city plumbing down here. So, where to basically throw these guys? I'm gonna say you're basically ahead of the walls, maybe. The aqueduct. I generally don't actually build aqueducts quite a bit, by the way, so let's just throw this right, down here in deficient. The only reason I've ever built aqueducts, by the way, is just to sort of like, increase population growth. And that's basically like cities like, Trentium or like, the other one's basically for the Brutii and like the Scipii that basically like are on the mainland of like Italy. And it main reason is basically sort of like to help you get to like Imperial Palace and basically like aiming for Marian for reform. So that's basically like the purpose I basically see for aqueducts, basically like improving like the population for like those like cities basically want to grow as fast as possible. Sea plumbing I almost never build because it's just terrible. So we'll throw basically ahead of like the siege engineer, but it's just like this I never build these. And the thing about I should actually know about city plumbing by the way. This is actually one of the first like buildings actually has like a negative like thing to it besides like the stables. And you actually get like your generals getting negative traits from like city plumbing. So that's one of the reasons I basically also don't like this as well, because like these advanced structures basically will do stuff basically to like your generals basically like that. So to avoid like issues with my generals basically getting like negative traits, I basically avoid like city plumbing for that reason as well. Speaking of like positive traits though for like generals, because we're gonna have some positive ones for the academy. Academy, Scriptorium, Luis Magnimus. So the Academy is basically one of those like these like things I basically build like all over the place a lot of the time, and I'll say they're probably like a little bit weaker than like stone walls, but they're definitely one of my favorite structures to build for sure. Scriptorium, we're basically throw it. I consider higher than cavalry stables and like stuff like that. Governor's house. Is it better than roads? Well, it's not better than roads or highways, I guess, so there's that. Let's see here. And yeah, I did lose my like headset again right there, but whatever. I think we'll throw this basically ahead of like the stables. And then we have like Luis Magnus right here. This is basically like on par with like Ikuria in my opinion of like how useful it basically is. By the time I basically building this, I'm like late game already, so it's like I don't really care. So it's like the best of like the worst structures, but it's like down there basically for the most part. All right, so these structures basically here. Now these structures basically they're important for like upping your generals, and that's basically like purpose basically in the game. They also provide you a little bit of happiness as well, but I mean that's not the main reason basically sort of building. You're basically for like your generals basically for the most part. Procurement wise, it's basically easy enough to basically get academies, but the Scriptorium and the Luis Magnus take a little bit more basically build. So I basically like build like the academies basically for initial traits basically get from it, as well as like the happiness bonus, but the other stuff I really don't care about that much for the most part. I've already been building like the next like structures down here is like the arenas, for example. So arena, amphitheater, and coliseum. So where do I basically throw the coliseum? Definitely ahead of like academies. So let's throw this right in between the stone walls and the arena. The amphitheater, that's probably on par of like the shipwrights and the dockyards. So I'm gonna throw it right there, I think, in Laudable. And then the Coliseum is basically like well, I guess if you want to build like Mamilios, I guess there's like that purpose racing for them. Let's throw them right there. All right, so arenas, amphitheaters, and coliseums. You'll want to basically build in these like inner zones, because if you basically have a general basically there, they'll basically have like negative traits basically start to pile up because they're not like fans of the game for the most part. So you basically want to build like arenas basically sort of like offset that. And they provide like some decent like bonuses to your generals as well, where like they become fans of the games. And if they're a fan of the games, basically they'll be like able to like get some nice like traits basically from it. The arena as well also basically gives you like access to like Samite like mercenaries, or you'll get Veltates, gladiators. You'll get like the Samite gladiators and like Mermelios basically for like these like summons as well. Procurement wise, arenas are easy enough to build. Amphitheaters are like, eh. Mm, I'm kind of wondering if I actually should knock this down a little bit. I never really like made use of amphitheaters for most parts, so I'm really wondering if I actually should knock this down for that reason. So, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna knock down amphitheaters because if you about to decide, like, they are useful, but I mean, I don't really like, rely on them all that much for most parts. So, we're gonna move them right down to there, I think. All right, so that's basically all like the non-temple structures basically sort of out of the way. And if you basically want to see what it basically looks like, there's a snapshot of where we basically have everything in. The top structures are like the port, the sewers, market, stone walls, the Coliseum, Academy. Then I have the shipwright, roads, trader, um, the Legion's barracks basically right there. Um, public baths. Um, epic stone walls or awesome stone walls. Can't remember what it basically is. Large stone walls, and then we have this stuff down here. And I feel like good showing where basically stuff basically lies. So there's our army barracks right there, and then there's the military barracks right there. So it's basically where it needs to be. I think for most part of these structures. All right, so let's jump into the temples. Now, I have mixed opinions basically on the temples because some of them I really like and some of them I really sort of dislike. And I never really built the Ceres temples that much, but um, they are probably a decent temple enough to basically have if you want to basically have growth in your settlements and stuff like that. And they give you fertility traits, which is basically useful as well. On the basically something note about my Julii campaign. I actually sort of wish I actually played the Julii where I actually had a lot more of these Ceres temple space in play because they're actually very useful if you basically have your generals basically go into those some basically sort of govern because they'll actually get fertility traits basically means more children. So if you want to basically get lots of children, you basically go and go to these shrines of Ceres and just get it that way, for example. But whatever. I never really used these much outside of their this national intrinsics as a result. They give you a little bit of happiness, of course, all temples. So these give you that as well. Procurement wise, say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for the most part. So let's just quickly go through these. So Ceres basically has a 22 right here. So I think I'll throw that one right there because roads are still pretty important. So where to have roads basically down here? There they are. So yeah, I don't consider them to be better than roads, but they're still pretty important. The temple of Ceres probably is going to be on par of the shipyard or dockyard, or rather dockyard and land clearance. I think rather is I'm basically looking at whatever. So maybe throw that right there. Large temple series, awesome temple series are both 17s. They're basically around here for most parts, so throw us right there. And then the Pantheon. Now, I want to note that the Pantheon's basically going to be all but getting sort of shafted here a little bit because I don't really use Pantheon because by the time we're basically game, it's late game, so that basically hurts me a little bit. It can be useful Pantheons, but it's just one of these things where it's it just takes too long to basically get them underway as a thing, right? Alright, now, probably my least favorite temple in the game is probably just trying Bacchus line. And I've actually mixed feelings now basically on how I'm basically rating this. Now, this is basically another temple I actually kind of wish to actually explore a little bit more of Julii campaign because basically the Shrine of Bacchus and all this other stuff, it gives you negative traits to your generals for sure, but you can get some very nice ancillaries or basically basically follow along your generals as a result from these these temples. So they have some benefits as a result for that purpose. So, but basically both bad and good things about like Shrine of Bacchus. So, um, what to say about them? I think I'm basically gonna go and say like I wish I used them more. So it's gonna throw them like ahead of like the series like Pantheon right here. But that's still like the worst thing, the Pantheon of like Bacchus. So whatever. Um, Ahead of like Siege Engineer, but that's not saying much. And yeah, another thing about these temples, by the way, they basically provide you like with like lots of happiness for Julii, but you're gonna have access to Jupiter like temples as well, so it's not that great of like a bonus basically for them. And speaking of Jupiter, basically down here, these are like my preferred temples for like the Julii basically use because they basically don't provide like that much in like negative traits so to speak. Well, I shouldn't say that. The thing about like the shrines of Jupiter, they provide you with like the trusting trait, which is basically like sort of like a mixed bag trait. They're not bad or good, but overall basically like all the traits from Jupiter are basically good traits. And I basically use these a lot basically in my July campaigns because there's not a whole lot of like negatives basically to using them, so why not? All right, let's see here. Shrine and Temple are both range 20, so where to throw them? They're gonna be in par of like these like right here. And is this a little bit high, I wonder? Because I actually have this like a little bit lower by the way, so how many structures do I have like is 20? So 1, militia, palisade. That's the archery range. Why do I have the archery range like right there? And you know what? I actually use this quite a bit, so I'm just gonna knock this basically up here a little bit. But this not this one, but is it that one? I'm getting confused because like this is like a giant list basically go through, right? So bear with me. You're gonna go right there. Alright, so the Jupiter Temples. These are basically like some of the best temples basically in the game basically get, so throw that one right there, and we'll throw you one right there. So, temples are just awesome. They're like, one turn basically build, increase your happiness by quite a bit. Getting like this one is like, not bad either if you basically have like issues, but I generally don't like build that one as much to like the Temple of like Jupiter. I mean, I have like a 5 here because I still build them a lot, but I mean, they're not something I basically build as much. Just gonna drop this down a little bit. Large Temple of Jupiter and like awesome Temple of Jupiter. So let's see here. I'm gonna throw the large one basically up to the top of mediocre, and I'll basically throw the awesome one. I built these a little bit, but I mean, they're kind of like behind like Palisades, I think, in terms of like their prospects. And then of course we got like the Pantheon. That'll basically go let's say ahead of like Ceres, but I mean that's basically where I was gonna put it. Now I should probably actually know something about like the temples of Jupiter here. When you guys get to like the awesome Temple of Jupiter and the Pantheon of Jupiter, you do get access to the Arcani. And I felt that was basically something novel about them that sort of like, gives at least a little bit more of an edge over like, the other like, temples. So that's basically why I have like the awesome Temple for Jupiter being like a tool for like, recruitment down here because for those Arcani. You don't really get anything from the Pantheon of Jupiter, but I mean, it's just worth knowing that like, that's just something that happens. Alright, now, on the by the way, these like temples right here, the ones from Jupiter to like, Ceres, and Bacchus and stuff like that. These are all like the Julii Temples. Now we're gonna get to like, the Brutii Temples down here. So we got a Shrine of Juno's, Mercury's, and Mars. And I want to know about like in comparison to like the Julii and the Scipii, I consider these to like be like the weakest temples in the game. But it is what it is. So whatever. The first is basically a Shrine of Juno. So basically have this like a week 17. So I'm just gonna throw it basically at the end because so we're just gonna throw it. The rest basically are like 16, 15, 15, 15. Now the reason I basically have like Juno basically is like so low basically here is because compared to like say the Ceres temples basically over here, I didn't really use these as much, and they're actually like a little like of a mixed bag in terms of what they basically do. You can basically get some like nice like health benefits for like your generals basically from these, but you can also get some detrimental benefits as well. So it's sort of like a mixed bag, and that's sort of like picking, so to speak. And I can't really say like I think mushroom is a result of that for the most part. So let's see here. I keep going back and forth by the way because I'm going to like go. I have like the Panther Juno basically up here a little bit, but whatever. We're just gonna basically throw like you right there, and we'll go right here view. Right there view. And I'll probably like Temple Juno basically. I don't really want to throw it basically at the top because it's basically like not at the top of things, but it's probably behind like Foundry if like Foundry's like a 16 in this game, rating basically. So I actually have Foundry 15, so ahead of you then. We have an archery stuff down here basically, so the catapult range at 15. Archer range at 15. Apparently didn't have a whole lot of like 16s apparently, so okay, that's good to know. Where's the farms? Alright, so there we go, I got 16. So it's basically behind like the farms basically in terms of like where basically rate these temples. I think it's basically like showing basically where we're gonna put them, so it's fine. Alright, so the shrines of Mercury. Now, these have to be like the most interesting and most like awful temples basically at the same time, because they basically provide you like an economic boost basically to your like summons, but it's a very small economic boost, and they basically have like some penalties basically to like your generals basically like the like upper tiers basically of like the awesome like the Pantheon. So it's very much a mixed bag. I use these quite a bit because you get some nice stuff basically from, but they're basically like ones that you won't want to have your generals basically in for the most part. So let's see, we got like 19, 18, 19. So let's throw you right here. I'm gonna throw you this temple right down here, I think, and we'll throw down right there. And then we'll have like the awesome Temple of Mercury and a Pantheon. So you're gonna be behind you, and then one of the worst Pantheons is this one. So let's just throw you right there in front of Curia. And by the way, they still like provide like the like benefits to like your population like order and stuff like that. So there's still basically that basically make them like fairly decent these temples. But I mean outside of like their like happiness, there's like some negative basically to it. And I'd rather have like our temples I think as a result. Just to throw it out there. That's actually something to note, but like the Mercury temples though. By the way, one of the reasons basically I'm rating these like so high is because like the Juno and like the Mars temples have like their detriments as well. This is the thing about the Brutii Temples. They're all like equally sort of bad in a way because like they all have like negatives basically to them. Anyways, Shrine of Mars is basically like probably the best temples for like the Brutii I guess, but that's not really saying much. I've really been covering like what these temples basically do. So you basically get health bonuses from like the Juno ones for the generals. Mercury basically gives you like economics for your summits, and Juno basically gives you like health ore for your summits as well. Mercury basically gives like detriments to your traits basically at like the awesome like Pantheon. The Shrines of Mars. These are basically like the go-to temples in a lot of these summits I guess because they all give you like upgrades to your troops. And, for the most part, a lot of people basically like the upgrades to your troops, even if they get like, very angry generals to resolve it. For most part, I probably use these like the most basic of all the temples, but doesn't really say much for the most part. So, I have ranked these like 17, 20, 20, 18, 15. So let's just throw that right there because why not? And I liked it more in Juno, so move Juno basically right there, I think. Temples of Mars, large Temple of Mars are both like 20s, so they're kind of on par of like Jupiter Temples, I guess. Where is the Jupiter Temple, by the way? Over here. So let's just throw those right there. Awesome Temple, basically that's an 18, so I'm gonna say that's ahead of Mercury, but behind like the Jupiter one. And then the Pantheon Mars, basically like none of his these like sort of crappy like Pantheons, so I'm gonna say this is probably ahead of like the other stuff because it actually provides a lot of benefits, but I mean it's still deficient. Now, I'll note in terms of like upgrade temples, basically like these like, basically upgrade your experience for your troops. Basically, is what they're all about. Which is basically gonna be in contrast to like the Vulcan ones. No bias. Well, the Mars like temple of like Awesome Temple gives you Arcani, so that's basically where you get from the Brutii. So basically like that gets them like a little more of a buff result, similar to like the Jupiter Temple. All right, so Shrines of Vulcan for like the Scipii. So these are very, very similar to like the Mars like temples, but they don't have like the negative like the general like traits basically come with them. The traits basically get aren't really that like beneficial though. So there's like some things that like could be better I guess about these temple, but I built these like a lot in like my like primary like summons early on and like just like get the troops basically out of them, basically like primary arms so to speak. Let's see here. Shrine of Vulcan. You're basically ahead of like, Mercury's temple, I think, right over there. Temple of Vulcan. These I really like because I start to really get to really good upgrades from. So, um, yeah, we'll throw them right around here, I think. In between the two Mars temples, why not? Large Temple of Vulcan. So this is one of like the awesome like temples in this game. So let's just throw it ahead of like the walls. And then we got like the Austin Temple Vulcan and like Pantheon Vulcan. I mean, I put them down here basically like the deficient because they are so deficient. Probably better than like the crop rotation, but whatever. And that, of course it's a 12, so let's just throw that right there. So that's what I think of the upgrade temples. I think that's like well suited to them, so that's fine. All right, so the Saturn. All right, so these are basically what I consider to be the best temples in this game. As you can see, I have all like 22 except for like the Pantheon. We still have like 17 by the way. So Pantheon Saturn basically is still going to go up like quite a bit here. So I'll just throw it at the end, but it's still basically the best like of the Pantheons. So these are all ranked at like 22 here, which basically means they're all up here. They're definitely like my favorite temples basically for sure. So let's throw you basically up over to here. I think I did Ceres at 22. I did, so that's fine. A little bit worse than Ceres, perhaps, but I mean, not like horribly worse or anything like that. This is definitely better than both of them though, so let's just go right there of that temple. Public order is like an issue by the way at some point, so throw that right there. Behind it. And then these can just go at the end, like the awesome one, I think. So what's my weakest 22? Roads, paved roads. Where's the trader? Trader's post, 22. Yeah, I'm gonna say this is worse than a trader, by the way. So let's just throw right there, I think. And then we have like, Legion Barracks basically like, right there. So that's basically our divine line, basically doing our stuff. Now, I want to note that basically in terms of like, the temples that basically get from like the Saturn, they're basically just like the ones from Jupiter, but they don't have like any negative traits basically attached to them. So you just get like all positive basically from them for like your management of your settlements and stuff like that. And they give you like the most like, happiest basically, in terms of like, the Scipii Temples, so is that as well. Now, I'm gonna use ample use like this, like these, like temples because the thing about the Scipio territory is that like it's very like vast and like expansive, so you need to have like a lot of Saturn temples in like your suns as a result. Never really got any Pantheons to do like get like one maybe in like Carthage, but I mean it's like it could be better. You also get the Arcana by the way from like the Austin Temple, so is that going for as well? All right, so the shrines of Neptune and the Pantheon and everything else here. So let's get to them, I guess. Now, these are basically all very interesting to like these pantheons because the thing about like the Neptune temples is that they don't have any real like negative like traits basically to them or like any positive ones because they don't have any at all. And you can't build them until you get like a port, so their procurement's a little bit like off as a result of that, but not a whole lot. And they give you like the happiest things, like they give you the boats. I think like the only temple that's really done dirtiest games like the Neptune ones. Like there's like some purpose like the Juno ones. Bacchus, even though I hate them, they basically like have their ancillaries. Neptune basically gives you like the ships, and it's just sort of lacking for the most part. Let's see here. My RAM a little bit too high, I wonder. 16, 15, 15, 16, 16. It feels odd basically for like, the path of Neptune basically up to like the 16 there because you're basically getting access to the Deseri. So let's knock that basically down a little bit. Well, no, I want to be like, the Deseri the Deseri like Dreadnought for like, Scipii is still better than like, the Corvus like, Quinquirium. So let's just throw it up basically for our purpose, I guess. So 16, 15, 15, 16, 16. So let's see here. Let's roll you high deficient over here. 15, 15. So Brody's basically back over here. You basically give access to like, the boat, the Corvus Quinquirium, but it's like, not that great or anything, so I'm gonna throw this like, Pantheon basically have like the Neptune like, shrine. And this one right here, I guess. What's our like, our weakest stuff here? So the Pantheon of Julii is like, over here, I guess. Large Temple of Juno is basically over here. I think that's a good place for him right there. So, that's basically where I throw his temples. And then we get to the mines. So, this wasn't basically on like old quality old games like, tier list. So this is basically the entire reason basically these are like, making my like, new tier list, but whatever. Mines and mines +1. So, mines are basically our economic resource in this game, and they basically give you like a fixed amount of income per turn. The mines themselves are fairly easy to get. Mines +1 are a little bit harder and like, not as useful, but still basically like, useful enough. I think I'll throw that basically into deficient right there, and the mines themselves. They're probably ahead of the Shrine of Mercury and Vulcan. Is that where I want to place them, I think? Or do I want to basically throw them ahead of like some of those palaces, perhaps, because, it's better than Imperial Palace, I guess. We'll throw it right there. There we go. Alright, so, That's generally where I basically like sort of throw everything right here, I think, for most part. In terms of like, how I basically rate everything. And I probably put like, these basically a little bit, lower than I really need to be, but whatever. Proconsul's Palace and like, the Governor's like, palace basically should be a little bit higher. Mm, that I could actually knock down, so it's a little bit, that's just fine, I think, for the most part. I do use like, government policies all over the place though, so is that about them? So, you're the Governor's Palace. And of course, once you basically get these on your list, you can't copy or anything like that, so there we go. So that's the proconsul right there, apparently. What are you then? There's the Governor's Palace right there. Okay, so you're going to basically go up a little bit. Head of this stuff. Militia Barracks basically had like, at 20. Yeah, that's fine. We'll basically throw this basically ahead of like the militia, the militia barracks right there. All right, so that's basically a really good like, showing up basically like how I basically sort of like rate these like, overall, I guess. Can I zoom this out basically so like, it looks a little, nicer, I guess. So. Nope, doesn't want to basically like, zoom this out, I guess. So, oh well. But there we go, basically. Some of the top stuff is basically, in terms of temples, basically, Saturn temples are basically like all good. Jupiter, like, pretty decent, as is Mars. Mercury, Vulcan, and like, Mercury are like, somewhat like decent to like look at. Though a lot of the temples basically like fall down here to like the, the bottom basically for the most part. So, not much more basically saying that. Alright, now in comparison to like, quality of games, I guess, here's like, list is basically right here, as you can see on the screen. He's got a couple of things basically like, different than mine. Like he's got like, the Pantheon's basically like, a lot higher result of, of I guess of like, using them, I guess. He's got like his like, walls right here, basically up here. And like his walls basically down here. Now, note about something to note as well about like his list versus mine. Keep in mind I'm actually also doing my like, ratings basically with the remastered version of the game. And his is basically based on the original. These like epic stone walls down here, for example. In the original game, they're actually really terrible. The like epic stone walls, so I can see why basically races like being bad. So that makes perfect sense to me. But in remaster, like where basically have it, them be a lot higher, like all the way up here. They're actually a lot more beneficial in the remaster, I think. So that's just something to keep in mind. Some of these like structures are a lot better in like the remaster than they are in like the like original game. And I'm not basically much like myself. He has like he's like temples basically all over the place. He's got like Saturn and Jupiter basically up here. He's got like Mars and Juno and stuff like that over here, like the good category. Actually, Juno, Ceres, Neptune, stuff like that all the way down here. All right, well that's basically it for like my tier list here, I think. So I'll basically like just like save this and basically get going. But other than that, hope you guys basically enjoyed the tier list and take care.